Comic Boom.
Hey guys, Comic Boom here to review Event Leviathan Issue 1. This is it, guys, the big event that Bendis has been bragging about, that he wrote specifically for artist Alex Maleev. This is it. This starts everything off. We had the rise of Leviathan. We had that one shot for $9.99. That was how many? I don't know, 80 pages or whatever it was. That just came out. I believe last week. I never reviewed it, but I'll sort of truncate what happened there, leading into this issue 1 of Event Leviathan. Now, just as a quick synopsis here, leading into all this, all the various intelligence agencies of the DC universe, and they are Cobra, Task Force X, Argus, the DEO, Spiral, and Cadmus, as well as Leviathan. They've all been essentially destroyed, or they're in the process of being destroyed. And of course, somebody has taken over Leviathan from Talia al Ghul, and they are this Leviathan, and we don't know if Leviathan is a man or a woman. We think it's a man, but you never know in this day and age, right? So Leviathan, somebody's taken over Leviathan, there was almost like a coup within Leviathan to take it over from Talia al Ghul, and we saw Talia al Ghul essentially being overthrown as the head of Leviathan, sort of in the Rise of Leviathan one shot, and this issue basically starts off with the Odyssey being destroyed. This massive building, this massive building, which is a new intelligence headquarters for Argus. Essentially, it's on their opening day, and Argus stands for Advanced Research Group Uniting Superhumans, and this Odyssey building, and it's a gorgeous building, and Alex Maleev does such a fantastic job drawing the epic nature of this new building on this inaugural sunny, beautiful day. Basically a grand opening of this Odyssey building, which, unknown to the public, is the secret headquarters of the new Argus. And Argus, of course, the goal of Argus is to basically help unite and to create a better understanding between superhumans and the general public. Now, who's head of the Argus is essentially this Dr. Strand character. And it's Steve Trevor is in the Odyssey, and he's basically telling Dr. Strand, look, we got to get out of here because this place, you're not safe. You got to get out of here. Intelligence agencies all over the globe are being destroyed, and this is probably next. We got to get out of here. And of course, before she can say much, that's exactly what happens. Leviathan shows up. The Odyssey is completely destroyed, and the issue here basically starts off with Batman and meeting Lois Lane in the rubble of what's left of this Odyssey building. And this is where Bendis really shines. Bendis has done a really good job here on his dialogue. This is right up Bendis' wheelhouse. He nails this issue. He does a really good job. I've been very hard on Bendis on his dialogue in Superman and his dialogue in Young Justice, but his Young Justice dialogue has improved somewhat, and Superman, it's gotten better. He's finally starting to find his stride here in Event Leviathan. He's starting to develop a fairly good handle on the intelligence agencies of the DC universe, and he's starting to get a good handle on the characters. The dialogue here between Batman and Lois Lane and Steve Trevor, as they sort of try to figure out what exactly is going on within the remnants of the destructive rubble of the Odyssey, is just spot on. It's really good. Bendis is really starting to understand the voices here. He's particularly good at showing the intelligence of Batman and Lois Lane and Steve Trevor. Even the way Batman, he shows how Batman respects Lois Lane. Batman didn't want to disrespect Lois Lane when he said, basically, how did you get in here? Why do you have that Kryptonian weapon? And Lois took offense to that, saying, well, I got here on my own, thank you. I didn't need Superman's help, is what she was implying. And he said, I didn't imply any disrespect. I was just making a logical deduction based upon what I could see. And you could see that they have that rapport with each other, but at the same time it's professional, and he treats Lois very much like an equal, because he knows that's exactly what Lois is. Because even earlier on in the Superman issues and in the Rise of Leviathan one shot, when Clark Kent was basically kidnapped, or allowed himself to be kidnapped, and they investigated that, Batman investigated the crime scene of Clark Kent being abducted, and he came to the same conclusions Lois did. So Lois Lane is no slouch, and we're finally starting to get an intelligently portrayed Lois Lane, because Bendis hasn't done a did not do a particularly good job early on with respect to Lois Lane, at least with respect to her personal life and how she treated Superman. But that's another issue. But their dialogue here and how they sort of try to figure out what's going on is just fantastic. It was a joy to read this from beginning to end. It really flowed. The dialogue flowed very naturally. There was no interruptions. I thought it read very well. In particular, when Steve Trevor joined them in conversation, because Steve Trevor, as Batman and Lois were talking, he's listening to them talk, and he's hidden through his own tech from Batman's radar, and he makes. It was actually even kind of funny. He made the comment that, "Good Lord, you guys never shut up. You guys kept talking." That's why they never knew he was there. But in any event, one of the things that's revealed here is Steve Trevor makes the very astute observation that, look, we're all suspects here. I survived the Odyssey being destroyed, and he saw that Dr. Strand disappeared. There doesn't seem to be any bodies again. So even though Leviathan has destroyed the Odyssey building, where did all the bodies go? So Leviathan he or she is not a killer, but clearly there's an agenda at play. But who is Leviathan? As Steve Trevor astutely pointed out, he's a suspect, but he's left to survive. So he appears to be the only survivor, but how he survived, he had his own tech that basically put him in a bubble that protected him from the explosion, but there's no evidence that tech even exists anymore. That was destroyed by the explosion. So he's a suspect. Maybe Steve Trevor's Leviathan. Lois Lane could be Leviathan because she was there. Clark Kent was kidnapped. Superman was attacked, and yet Lois Lane is fine. Lois Lane's a suspect. Amanda Waller is a suspect. We know that already. Amanda Waller survived. She's a suspect. Why? And she basically left the Fortress of Solitude. She escaped from the Fortress of Solitude. She's a prime suspect. Sam Lane is also a suspect. He had a heart attack. Well, what better cover than having a medical emergency and portraying yourself like the victim when you're actually the mastermind behind it all? Also, Talia al Ghul is also a suspect, although it looks like she was a pawn based on the Rise of Leviathan one-shot. Look, you can't completely eliminate Talia al Ghul as a suspect either. So all these various players are a suspect. Mr. Bones, head of the DEO, he survived. He's also a suspect. And these things are all starting to come into play. And what Batman basically states is, look, the crime scene is so perfect. The crime scene is perfect. It's almost too perfect. All of these things are so subtle. It's all this misdirection that is being set up by Leviathan that is simply brilliant. While all the intelligence agencies around the world, which form the pillars and the foundations of the various world governments that keep them afloat, if those things are falling apart, this is literally creating a new world order, or in fact, eliminating a new world order. But as Batman, again, astutely points out, even if you eliminate an old world order or eliminate a new world order, the fact is you're creating a new world order. And that's exactly what Leviathan is trying to do. Because this issue ends with Leviathan confronting Dr. Strand and basically telling Dr. Strand, look, I think you're brilliant. I agree with your ideas. Because he says he basically agrees with what Dr. Strand was trying to do with Argus, creating a new world. And he basically feels that Dr. Strand had some really good ideas, but that she had to compromise on some of her more controversial plans for Argus because of higher-ups who couldn't quite see her vision. And he invites her to join Leviathan. He makes it very clear to her, look, he says, we are forming a new world order. There is a better way here. The old way doesn't work. There is a new and a better way, and join Leviathan, and because we are Leviathan and we're going to change the world. And it's very, very interesting. So this is very subtle. As Batman makes a very interesting comment when Lois says that she doesn't think it's Lex Luthor, or implied that Batman basically agrees with her, and because one thing that Leviathan doesn't have that Lex Luthor has is an ego. Leviathan is not out to draw attention to himself. Quite the opposite. Because as we know, Leviathan was quite impressed with Miss Leon, who basically in Metropolis is sort of teams up with the Red Cloud, and she likes to be behind the scenes. She doesn't like to be noticed. The true masterminds behind everything, they don't want to be noticed. They just want to control things behind the scenes. I mean, after all, why would you want to be noticed? Lex Luthor has an ego. He wants to be noticed. So this is not something that Lex Luthor would do. This is clearly, it doesn't have the feel of Lex Luthor. And as Batman states, it doesn't really have the feel of something Talia al Ghul will do, because Talia al Ghul likely also has an ego. But Talia's style is a little bit different here. And even Ra's al Ghul, Batman entertains the notion that perhaps Ra's al Ghul is alive, but the fact is they simply need more information here. Now, as Steve Trevor, Batman, and Lois Lane are having this conversation, Steve Trevor basically, his paranoia, I guess, gets the best of him. And maybe it's not paranoia, but maybe it's just his own way of thinking. But he actually thinks that Lois Lane and Batman are playing him. He doesn't know who to trust. And he's not willing to just sit back and do nothing. And he doesn't trust Lois Lane, and he actually ends up shooting Lois Lane and Batman. I don't think he intended to kill them, because he just grazed Lois. But he felt something was off. And now, fortunately, before Steve Trevor could do whatever it was he was going to do, Green Arrow was in the shadows, and he used a taser arrow to put down Steve Trevor. And meanwhile, the Question is hiding in the shadows, listening to their conversation. So this really was we got some really good detectives here that are in the remnants and the rubble of the Odyssey. We've got, again, Steve Trevor, Batman, Lois Lane, and the Question, and ultimately Green Arrow showing up. And so they know that they've got to get to the bottom of this, and Batman already made the comment that it's very likely that the best detectives in the world are already on top of it, because something just seems too perfect. Leviathan clearly is somebody that they have to be mindful of, and they got to be very careful and in terms of how they deal with Leviathan moving forward, because right now they don't have a lot of answers. They've got more questions than answers, and I suppose in that respect it was appropriate that this issue ended with a focus on the Question spying on Lois, Batman, and Steve Trevor and Green Arrow as he basically walks away. Overall, guys, it's a really, really intriguing and good opening issue. Good job, Bendis and Alex Maleev. Your art is truly fantastic. And Bendis was right when he said that this was a story specifically written for you. It really was. This is an issue that I highly recommend. I'm on board now. I'm not a huge fan of how this thing sort of built up in Action Comics, but now that it has its own series with Alex Maleev, I'm really interested to see where this is going to go. Guys, tell me what you think of Event Leviathan #1. Hit the subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter at Metropolis40. And until next time, Comic Boom out.